So hello, we're going to learn the first step on how to make our next project, which is a slab built textured maybe vase pencil holder. It's a container like this. You can see that there's texture on it. It's been painted, aka glazed I should say, on this. Here's another example with a different texture, kind of a cobblestone. You'll notice that in the grooves of the texture, it's a different color than on the top. First, obviously, you need texture to make that, which I'll show you how. But then later, it's a technique that we're going to do with the glazing that gets all that color in those grooves. Don't worry, you don't have to sit there with the little microscopic paintbrush. It's really cool, you'll see. So, let's get started. We want to talk first about the texture mat. You have a whole bunch of different textures to choose from. There are more than this out there. These are just the ones that I have at our school right now. So I've got this one that looks like cobblestones or bubbles or dragon skin maybe. Anyway, that makes this texture. I'll set that aside a minute. You have this one. It looks like bricks. Can you see it? There you go, bricks. This one looks like kind of funky squares. Here's one that kind of has a viney flower look to it. Can you see? I'll hold it still so it focuses. I don't know. If you can't see it, you can look at it more careful later. There you go. Then I have two of these, which are like a basket weave pattern. And then two of these, which are like fish scales or dragon scales. That's the one I used to make this. All right. What you need to know about using these texture mats is that they're in different thicknesses. These ones that are kind of black rubber are quite thick. I'm talking about how wide this part is. And that matters when you're rolling out the texture because you're going to have to give more pressure, push more pressure downward when you roll this out than if you use one that has a thinner backing like this one. All right. The blue one's kind of in between. It's a little thick, but not as thick as you see the other one there. Okay? So basically, if you choose to use these darker ones, the basket weave or the dragon scale one, or the fish scale, whatever you want to call it, when you roll that out, you really need to put a lot of force down to make that go down and get a good print. These little orange guys, you don't have to push that hard at all because they're pretty thin. A little bit of pressure will make it work. If you try it and your texture doesn't print nice the first time, then you can try again. Just smush up your clay and roll it out and try again. So everybody's is going to be the same size, and to make them that same size, the reason is so that they fit in my kiln. If you make them too big, they really get unruly really fast. And I chose to make them this size because they need to be big enough to fit your hand down in there so that you can smooth it out. Okay? But if it gets too big, it gets out of control. It has to get quite thick then to support the weight, and we just want to go there. It's going to be too much for you to handle. So this is a decent size. I think you'll be okay with it. This right here is the template for the rectangle. Now you notice that it is a little bit big, but that's because clay shrinks when it fires. Okay? I originally started with a piece this size. So you're going to get a nice chunk of clay, pretty big chunk of clay, and you want to roll it out with a rolling pin so that it fits this size. All right, so let's do that. Ooh, this is a little bit wet from the last project I just did on it, so I'm going to change that out a minute. Sorry about the weight. If that's wet, it's going to make it so that my clay wants to stick on it, and I don't want my clay to stick on it. Just saying. All right, so then I'm going to get a rolling pin. This rolling pin's pretty clean of chunks. If you've got dried up clay on here, don't forget that we have these excellent scrapers. Go hold this over a trash can and scrape the chunks off. Don't scrape them off just over the floor. Makes a giant mess. Okay, so we talked about rolling out when you did your slab lids on your other project, but just as a review, when you roll, it's kind of a back and forth motion, a rocking motion. And you see that the clay scooches in the direction that you're rolling. And don't forget, you want to avoid rolling off the edge like that, because all it does is make a really skinny piece that isn't going to be useful. So just rock back and forth almost to the edge, but not over it. And as I'm looking at this, I see we're about long enough, but we're definitely not wide enough. So I could either roll this way or I could turn my clay. Remember, if it stops scooching when you're rolling, if it doesn't slide in a direction, sometimes that means it gets stuck. Good to move it to a different spot, or better yet, just flip it completely over. I want it to get bigger this way, so I'm going to turn it. You're shooting for a thickness that's about as thick as your index finger if you have kind of grown-up size hands. If you've got really thin fingers or smaller hands, you might want to go for the widest part of your thumb. And you're also trying to get it to be, how do I want to say, all the same thickness across. Don't have like low spots and fat spots. You want to really put some effort into it to make sure that it's the same consistent thickness in all the parts of it. Okay? As long as you don't roll off the edge, you'll have pretty good luck with that most of the time. All right, so I'm checking now to see if this is big enough. Almost, but not quite. I'm going to flip my clay over again. Go a little bit wider and a little bit longer. I want to get that out of there because I don't want it to interfere with my texture print. All right. Just barely made it. I think to save chance, I'm going to go just a little bit more. I almost didn't have enough clay. If I had to roll this out much bigger, it would be too flat. If you can't fit this on there and still have it a decent thickness, that means you don't have enough clay. So go see me and I'll get you some more clay, because you obviously need enough to roll it out. Now, weird thing on this is, even though it's taller this way, some of these texture mats have an up and down. For instance, the brick one here, if this were on the side of the pot, the bricks could either run up and down vertically, right? Or side to side like you usually see bricks. If you don't care, then it doesn't matter. But if you care about which way your texture's going, you need to understand that with this rectangle, landscape direction is facing the right up and down. Let me say that again. When it's sitting landscape, as you look at it, up and down is the way it's supposed to be. If it's portrait, that's not up and down. If this really confuses you, come ask me. I'll talk to you about it later. So, you're not going to trace around this shape yet because we need to stamp the texture into it. If you cut this out and then stamp the texture into it with the rolling pin, as you press that, the rolling pin's going to make the clay grow a little bit and it won't be the right size. So use this first just to check, is it big enough? Is the clay rolled out big enough? Once you know yes it is, then you put your texture down with the texture side facing the clay. All right, can you see it? There's the texture right here. I can't tell by my camera angle. And you turn it so the texture's facing downward. I don't know if there's an up and down on this or not. Kind of looks like that's upward because all the flowers are going this way. So I'm going to put it on so that it goes up and down. Yay. All right. You don't want to just press it. You want to use your rolling pin. And as I said before, depending on how thick your texture print mat is, you put more or less pressure while you're rolling it out. This one is pretty thin, so I don't need a lot of pressure, but I'm going to start on one side. Think of it as a printing press. Sometimes it helps if you stand up. And I'm rolling back and forth, but only a little bit. I'm not going to go all the way across and then come back again. If I do that, I'll get a double print. You can see where the color's different, and I don't know, I can feel it, but there's like a little bit of a ridge right here. It goes up right at this point where I know that this part's already been printed, and the reason it's a different color is because this texture mat's down embedded into that clay. This part, it's just sitting on top. It's not embedded yet. So I'm going to continue from here. I'm not going to go over this part again because that would reprint it. I'm going to keep going in the same direction, rocking gently, and you're kind of just scooching that bulge, that rise where it's embedded versus not embedded. You just kind of push that across, and once you've got it pushed all the way across, don't go back over it again. That's why it's important to push it down strong enough the first time. It's easier, like I said, with these little mats, thin mats I should say, than the giant thick ones. Those you have to push hard. All right. So I've got my texture in here. You don't want to just pick it up from the middle. I recommend grab a corner or one side and just start peeling back. Ooh, pretty. Yes, you will say that. It'll be cool. So then, now this is textured just how I want it. I'm going to place this right on here. And then I can get my needle tool and carefully cut out these pieces, this piece I should say. Again, from when we talked about before, keep your needle tool straight up and down. Don't cut it slanty because that makes a really angled cut and your shape won't stay the right size for long. All right, so I'm going to peel off this extra clay from around my slab. Ooh, that's a nice slab. I'm going to save that. That's going to be clay you're going to use. Now, we want to be able to save these because you need to get your pieces before you can start putting them together. You may have used the smaller plastic cardboards before. That's not going to work now, so you're going to use the bigger plastic cardboards. And I forgot to grab some paper towels, so give me just a second. Yay, I'm back. All right, we already know that clay likes to stick to smooth, like plastic or glass surfaces, and so we don't want it to stick onto this plastic cardboard. To keep that from happening, we're going to put some paper towels down on the plastic cardboard. And you definitely never, ever, ever want to spray your slab. Big problems happen then because every place there's a groove, the water settles down in that groove and it weakens that clay, which will cause it to have cracking later on. So I've got this. I'm going to try not to spray my clay underneath. You don't want to make these drippy. You just want them evenly moist, not drippy. I already talked to you probably before about how to adjust the nozzle so it's not spraying in a stream. Anyway, that's good to go. Then you can carefully pick up your slab and place it. I would place it on one side. You want to be careful not to stretch it out of shape, and you also want to be careful not to smash up your pretty texture, okay? If you're out of time now, you've got these extra scraps and it might be time to clean up. So this is going to be your clay. You're in charge of making sure this clay is in decent shape for you to use again. I'll give you more clay if you need it, but you're not going to hand me back this and say, Miss Reamersma, this clay is dry. I need some wetter clay. Because you know what I'm going to say to you? Go recycle it. You know how to do that now. Okay, so that's there. It's still pretty decently moist for now. I'm going to put another paper towel here, and I'm going to put a paper towel here. I'm going to lightly mist these. I'm going to probably give a little bit more to this side because that's the part I'm going to smash up again. You don't want this to puddle on your slab at all, ever. That's bad. All right. Now, to wrap this up, you need a couple of plastic grocery bags. You've learned this before, but we'll review quick. Check to make sure that there's no holes in it. If there's little holes like the size of a quarter, that's not a problem. But if there's giant rips, that's bad. Put this down flat. Sorry, I gotta move some stuff out of the way. Put this down flat and think of this as a pizza pan, and this is your pizza oven, and you're just gonna slide this in from the side. Do, 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 do. Like that. Gently press the air out without smashing your projects. Gather this, twist it around, and tuck it under. You don't need to tie it. You don't need a twist tie. You've got another plastic grocery bag, and I'm checking it for big holes. This one seems fine. You could even have 2 or 3 holes the size of a quarter. It's still fine, but once it gets a giant gash in it, time to throw it out. So the front of this one is facing this way. The opening, the front of that one, is facing this way. You're going to put them opposite directions. One moment, I'm retwisting this, tucking it under. And now the open side goes towards the closed side, and the open side of this one goes toward the closed side of that one. And do a nice bit of twisting. And tuck that under. Sorry, it's not twisting good yet. There. Now, yay. You got your, I'm just pressing the air out gently. You got your clay all wrapped up, and that's super. But how are you going to know which one's yours? You don't want somebody else unwrapping your clay because I don't trust them to wrap it up good again. So you take some tape and a Sharpie, write your name, and I would write what period you're in. If you're in 5th period, go ahead and write P5. If you're in 6th period, like that you can figure out, you'd write P6. Put that there, and then there should be some parking spots on the shelf where this will fit just right. Okay, so that's the first step. That's the end of this video. Good work.